everyone. In today's demo, we're going to be exporting our schemas into an Excel format where we can easily make a change or add a field, import it back in, and see that change reflecting in our schema's UI. We'll then do a comparison of the old schema versus the new one, where we'll get to see what fields have been added or changed in any way, and see a similarity score between the two. Then we'll take a look at our schema tree before moving into our policies tab, where we can open up the PWRM 0002 policy and take a look at the trust chain, where we'll see all the BC docs that have been stored there. So first, we're going to start by going to the policies tab, where you'll see that I already have two policies imported here, which are PWRM 0002. I've labeled one as version 1 and version 2. However, both of these are the same currently. We're going to be making changes to version 2, where we can see a comparison of how it was before and what it looks like after the change. So let's go ahead and go to the Schemas tab. And here we have a drop-down, so we can see we have PWRM 0002 version 1 and version 2. I can go ahead and filter the schemas that I'm seeing on this page by selecting one of these. I want to go ahead and select version 1 so we could take a look at the schema that we're going to be changing. So this is the project details schema. We can click that button there to open it up. And now we're seeing all the fields that have been added to the project details form. So we have the summary description of the project, sectoral scope, project type, type of activity. And if we keep going down, we'll see that we have some location information being collected there, as well as information about the project participant. And if we go all the way down, we'll see that our last field here is further information. So for version 2, I'm going to go ahead and add a field, but I'm going to be using an Excel template that we have created, and it's easily downloadable. Making that change, importing it back in, where we'll see that reflecting here at the very end in our new schema. Now to download this template, you could easily go ahead and click on this button. It should download to your computer's files. However, for this demo, I'm going to navigate to version 2, where I'm going to go ahead and download this specific schema in an Excel format. So I could do that by clicking on that menu, selecting Export Schema, and select Save to Excel. Once that has downloaded, you can go ahead and open it up. So here we see all those fields we just saw in the schema for version 1. So we have the name of that schema at the very top here of project details. You could go ahead and add a description into it if you maybe want to explain what the project details form is all about. We have the schema type, and then we have these columns of information that we're also collecting. So we have the required field, field type, parameter, visibility, question, if we want to allow multiple answers, and a sample answer here. Anything that is captured within this sample answer column will be used when we are filling out the project information. If you're wanting to test the policy, we have a test button that can be selected, and everything that is captured here will be filled into those fields. So now going to the very bottom, where I'm going to go ahead and make my change, I'm just going to simply copy and paste this row. We can always go ahead and change this to yes or no. We can change it if we want it to be a string, maybe it's a number, a date. I'm going to leave it as yes. I want this to be a required field, so the user has to fill it out. I'm going to leave it as a string since this is going to be a text response. Now I'm going to go ahead and change this from further information to stakeholder information. Then I have yes or no if I want to allow the user to have multiple answers here. I'm going to leave it as yes, and then we can just leave that sample answer in there for now. Now, once you've made your change, you want to go ahead and save that file. Okay, now that we've saved that, we're going to go ahead and go back to the Guardian, where we can now click on this import button. We're going to select import from Excel, and we want to import that file that we just saved. I have it titled as Project Details Schema version 2. I'm going to select Open. And now we see the schemas that are within this file that we just uploaded. So we have the project details, and there's also another tab for date range. This is just to have the ability for the user to select a range instead of just adding one start date and one end date. Then we're going to make sure that this is binding to the correct policy. We want it to be PWRM 0002 version 2. And then I can select import. Now we get a notification down here that the schema was successfully imported. So we're going to see that we have project details up here. If I scroll down, we have project details right here as well. So right now we have 2 of them. I want to make sure I'm deleting the correct one. I can go ahead and click that edit button, scroll all the way down, see which one has that field, since I have them titled the same name. So this is our new project details form. We're going to go ahead and delete this old one here. And now when we click delete, this schema is being referenced within another schema, and we're going to go ahead and get a notification for that. So you see we have a warning here. There are some schemas that depend on this schema, which is the project description and monitoring report. So I just have to navigate to those 2. We have the project description here. I'm going to select edit, and we can easily swap out these 2. So I have the old project details. I want it to reference the new one we just made a change to. So it's going to be the second one. Then I'm going to select save. Then I'm going to go to the monitoring report and do the same thing. Going to select that second project details. And again, we could have named this maybe version 2 so that we could easily differentiate. All right, so now that I have updated that, I can go ahead and delete this old one. So we're seeing that it's allowing us to delete it. It wants to make sure that you're deleting the correct one. You could double check and select OK. And now we should only have one project details. So now to do a comparison, I'm going to select the compare button, select version 1 and version 2. Now we're going to select the project details form here. And we're getting a similarity score of 96%. So here we can see what policy we're looking at. To the left, we have version 1. To the right, we have version 2. And we know that we're only comparing the project details schema. Now you'll see that we have this key up here. So you see that all the green would mean that they're completely equal. If it's green and yellow, that means it has sub-schemas that are partially equal. All yellow would be fields that are partially equal. And then the red is that a match was not found. So being that these 2 schemas should be exactly the same, except the last field, it would reflect as all green. And we can go ahead and open one of those up to see all the information that's captured in there. So we have the name, and this is simply going to be the cell within Excel. We have cell G16. The project participant title, we want this to be required. We have it as a string. We want to allow multiple answers. And now if we go all the way down, now we're seeing that red. So here it's very obvious that we've made a change. We're seeing that we have G35, which didn't exist in the version 1, which is collecting information for the stakeholder information. And it has all of these here of, yes, we want it to be required. We want it to be a string. We're allowing multiple answers. So a good scenario to point out is if I were a standard registry putting out PWRM0002, and I want to make sure that no one is changing any fields within our schemas that we're requiring, we can go ahead and do this comparison. So let's say someone submitted this schema that I have just altered, but we're requiring the user to only fill out these fields. We know that there is an obvious change there. So this schema has been manipulated in some way, and that's why we're seeing this red row. So going back to our schemas, if I scroll down, we have what we call the project description, and what we capture in there would be the project details. So it would have all the fields that live within that project details schema. That's why we're referencing it here in the field type instead of having it as a string or a number. We want that whole entire schema to be referenced. We have the additionality determination, so we're also referencing that schema. Here we're allowing the user to select if the project, there's 3 options here about that project. This is the question that we're offering. You could edit these values too. Then we have the project plastic recycling that has its own schema, and the net plastic waste in year Y, which we know is a number. However, it's hidden from the user as this has its own equation that it follows, and it'll be calculated without the user needing to make any of those calculations themselves. So if I exit out of here, and I go back to that menu, I can go ahead and go down to tree. So by selecting that, we're going to see this schema tree up here. So we know that we're collecting a project description, which is really collecting a lot of information here, calculations as well that will be submitted when the user completes this form. Now, if we go all the way to the left, we see that the user is going to then fill out the project details, and that's associated with the date range, as I mentioned before. This is just so the user has the ability to have a date range instead of adding a start date and end date separately. Then we go into additionality. So the user has these questions that they have to fill out, and they take different paths. So depending if they answered yes or no, they're going to either fill out step 1.1 or step 2 and so on. So they'll keep going down this path all the way till they're at their investment analysis, which would be the end of that additionality questionnaire. Then here we have the baseline plastic recycling. So again, they'll have different paths they could take if they are collecting recycling waste that is without depolymerization or with depolymerization. Then again, they'll be answering the material type information and data associated with that. And we have a very similar path that will be followed, except this will collect data for the project where this was for the baseline. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and go to the Policies tab, where we'll take one final look at this policy, and we're going to look at the trust chain, see what's being collected in there. So I'm going to click that register button. I've already filled this out with some sample data, and we'll see the different tabs here. So we had the VVBs. I went through all these approvals, the project, adding it in there into the pipeline. We have the monitoring report that was submitted. I already minted for that monitoring report, being that the BVB verified it. And we went through all those steps outlined in the workflow. Then we have the VPs. I can select that, which is our verifiable presentation. We have an amount of 62 credits here. You'll see the date and time that I've minted this, and we can click View Trust Chain. So here you'll have all the information associated with this token, who the recipient is, the token amount, how much was transferred, the mint date, our verifiable signature. And then we have the policy name, the description. This is in dry run. It hasn't been published. And we have the issuer's name, which in this demo, it would be the administrator. Then we're going to see all of these cards down here at the very bottom with their own VC files. And this is outlining every single step that I took to get this policy to its final state here in the trust chain. So we have the policy was created, the project is created, the automatic completion of the project field. So the user had submitted all their project details, all of the information for their baseline, their project data, and all of that has been calculated. Then we have virtual user 2, which is the VVB. They have gone ahead and validated that project. Virtual user 1, being our project participant, created a monitoring report. And once they submit that, we have the automatic completion of the monitoring report fields, which I could open up here, and we're going to see that VC doc. So here's all the information that was collected and everything that was outlined within that schema tree that we took a look at. We have the project details. We have locations being collected. These are those date range we were talking about before. You'll see that they can add an image. This image is to provide yearly proof, whether it's receipts or contractual agreements. We have their additionality assessment, their baseline values and data that was collected, as well as all the auto calculations that were done for those values. And if we go all the way down, you'll see there's also some extra images. Keep in mind, this is some sample images that I've added in. And then we're going to see the final value here, which is the net recycled plastic waste in year Y. And this is how much we're going to be minting. So we know that we ended up minting 62, and we have 62.4 down here. Then if we go to the very end, we see that we minted WRCs, the waste recycling credits, and we know that it was the administrator who did that. And that'll be all for our demo. Thank you for watching.